Good evening and welcome to this roundtable discussion between the 8th Middlesex District State Representative candidates. With me this evening are Carolyn Dykema, Democrat, and Dan Haley, Republican, and they're both from Holliston. This roundtable discussion is being sponsored by HopNews.com. I'm David Hamacher. Thanks for joining us. If you're expecting to see the Board of Selectmen for the town of Hopkinton, tonight's television meeting will be rejoined at 8:30. You'll join that in progress. Today is October 28th. This is a little bit of a different format than you're probably used to if you've been watching the debates previously between these two candidates. Robert Falcione, the editor of HopNews.com, has drafted this format to make it an even playing field, if you will. Both of the candidates have been given the questions going back to last week. Most of the questions have been culled from the readership of HopNews.com. Now, this is going to be an interactive, open format. There's going to be no timing for the answers. They'll be able to ask each other questions, and they're even going to negotiate what they believe the next steps for the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority is going to be. They'll ask each other one question, and the final statements will be why they think they're a better choice than their candidates. I want to thank all of the HopNews.com readers for their questions, and I thank the district for their input and interest with this as well. Let's get started. Many of the topics that we received from the readership has to do with, guess what? The economy and the fiscal crisis that the county, the community, the county, the state, and the country, and the global community at large. So we're going to push those questions back a little bit, and we're going to focus on, first of all, the questions that came from the community at large. So Carolyn, we'll start with you. Many college students who have been on track for a college degree found out mere days before this semester started that the MEFA, the funding authority, would not be offering loans. So they are forced to sit out this semester or more and are without health care coverage for the lack of a small dollar amount loan, $1,000, $1,500, $3,000, and those same students suddenly find themselves without health insurance because only full-time college students over 19 can be carried as dependents on their parents' insurance. How do you see the Commonwealth addressing this funding lending gap?
Well, there are two issues there, David. I think you're talking about the funding lending gap as well as the health care situation and health care availability for young people. The credit crisis that's going on starts from the top at the national level. Clearly, we've seen what's going on in the economy. Not only are college students having a tough time getting money, but also so is our state. The state of Massachusetts has been having a tough time getting credit, as well as our small businesses, people looking to buy homes. I think that's a bigger problem. But what we can do locally to address that and statewide is to really take steps to restore fiscal confidence across the board. And I think what we've seen with the governor making the difficult choices to balance our budget and to make those hard decisions is the step in the right direction. I think the legislature also needs to participate in those same difficult decisions and demonstrate to the public that we are serious about balancing the budget. We're serious about restoring fiscal stability to the markets. And also at the national level. And I do believe that the upcoming presidential election, the results of that will also have an effect, and hopefully a calming effect on the markets and the availability of credit. The second issue is related to healthcare and healthcare availability for college students. And luckily, Massachusetts has been a leader in healthcare reform. The new healthcare legislation that was enacted several years ago actually has I believe it's called the Community Connector program that makes healthcare coverage available to young people ages 18 to 26 as long as they remain in state. So there are options there, there are cost-effective options available. So that issue, I believe, has already been addressed to a great degree.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, well, Carolyn's right. There's two issues in that question, and I assume that question was probably submitted by a reader who has a child in this situation, and so I would encourage that person. I hope they're listening, but I would encourage that person to contact Mass Health, because it is correct that there is a safety net in our system for students in that sort of situation. Talk about the MIFA situation for a moment. I'm on the Board of Trustees at Framingham State College, and of course Framingham State, like our other public colleges and also some of our private colleges and universities, dealt with this problem. The way they dealt with it, MIFA was unable to offer loans for roughly a month. Now, MIFA is not the only option out there. MIFA, because they're tax exempt, they get about a half-point better rate for loans, and that's why they're an attractive option for a lot of families. But the way that Framingham State handled it is, I believe, the way most of our colleges handled it, and that was to work with families, work with the students to identify other lenders who could provide those loans. And at least at Framingham State, to my knowledge, we didn't have that situation where students were forced to sit out a semester. I haven't heard that is a widespread problem. And then MIFA was able to float a bond and is now making loans again. The broader issue, though, and Carolyn mentioned that the Commonwealth has been unable to borrow money, and that's true. One of the problems I've been talking about is that the Commonwealth this year began to borrow money to pay its operational expenses at an earlier point than in any year in our history. And that was a direct result of the fact that from the get-go this year we had $1 billion+ deficit. The governor's A&F secretary, his top economic advisor, said in January that if the legislature didn't address its spending problems, we'd be looking at somewhere north of $1 billion deficit this year. Here we are looking at somewhere north of $1 billion deficit this year. What they didn't expect to happen was for the credit crisis to happen and bring all this to a head before the election. It would have been much more convenient for the people who got us into this mess if this had all come to a head after November. But here we are, we're dealing with it. MIFA was one casualty of that situation, and happily they've managed to correct for that and are now making loans. Healthcare reform, Carolyn's right. That was an initiative put forth first by Governor Romney, and it was passed to nationwide acclaim. The problem is in the way it's been implemented, as with many things that have happened under our one-party government. They have done a great job in increasing availability of health insurance and increasing the number of people in the Commonwealth who are covered. They've done a much worse job at controlling costs, there were two prongs to this plan: increasing coverage and lowering costs. Costs have continued to escalate, and there's no mystery as to why that's happened. There was supposed to be a certain amount of coverage provided on a mandatory basis for a certain premium. And what's happened in implementation is the amount of service that is required to be provided has been expanded. The amount of the premium that's required has been reduced. And so obviously the net effect of that is costs continue to escalate. Another thing that was required in the plan, an essential part of the plan, was that as more and more people got covered, and coverages or uninsured are down by something like 30% now. Payments that the state makes, massive payments that the state makes on an annual basis to large metropolitan health systems were supposed to decrease, because those payments are made to cover people who come to the emergency room without coverage. What has in fact happened, because those large metropolitan health systems have very strong lobbyists, is that those payments have remained constant, even as the number of people they're serving with that money has decreased. So we do have a great healthcare reform initiative underway. I would argue that in implementation it's being mismanaged, and there need to be some fundamental changes to the way we're doing things before it comes crashing in on itself and we lose this great opportunity to fundamentally change the way we do things and provide coverage to all of our citizens.